Let me just pop it in the box. There.
Look, could we be quite quick?
Certainly, sir. Ready in the flashiest of flashes.
So, Laura, when we sat down to think about what we were going to do, what movies we were going to cover for our third holiday series, we realized that a lot of people did not get to experience our first season, and nobody has gotten to experience it in video form. But we still have all the footage from it. So, what we decided to do is to re-release the 5 films that we shared 2 years ago, starting with Love Actually, and all of these will be available for the first time in video form, re-released in audio form with a little something extra.
Yeah, so definitely necessary that we are staying true to our new format of having our this or that segment. So we're going to be re-recording those and including them in all of these holiday releases.
So whether you're listening or watching for the first time or revisiting these with us, we hope you'll enjoy them, and we hope that you'll have a great holiday season.
All right, Michelle, I'm starting with you. What are your first memories with this film?
I saw it in the movies with my roommates, Tamara and May. I have a very clear memory of, I want to say it was May because it sounds more like her, but one of them like audibly gasping in the scene where Sarah and Carl are finally hooking up and he takes his shirt off.
For obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons. I have to be honest, Laura, while for a long time I've thought of this as one of my favorite movies, now kind of like both reflecting back on what was going on in my life at that time when I saw the movie in the theater for the first time, and now watching it through kind of a removed adult lens. I just rewatched it today, but before that, I don't think I had watched it in maybe like 6 years. So it's a good amount of time has passed. And I think overall, it made me feel like more sad than happy. I know we kind of keep this podcast light, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but I do remember when I saw this in the movies, it had been, I don't know, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years since I was in a relationship. And it was going to be another like 2 years before I was in a relationship again. I remember really liking the movie, but at the same time feeling like kind of empty and feeling pretty melancholy about, especially about like that Kelly Clarkson song. Like it really brought back a lot of memories. Like I hadn't heard that song in forever and I forgot that it was even in this, but I remember really liking it, but I think also feeling like really sad whenever I listen to it. And this is the only movie that I can think of that like had an effect on me in that way, because I am not super permeable when it comes to this sort of thing. I don't really like let things like this get to me. Have you ever associated this movie with sadness?
No, but I think that's a pretty fair statement, because when you're in college, everything definitely feels a little bit more heightened, especially in your love life, as you're kind of in this limbo period between childhood, quote unquote childhood, and adulthood. And so much of the messaging is finding a partner around that age. So I'm sure those messages were very loud and clear for you. And I think if this movie had come out while I was in college, I probably would have been feeling those same feelings, even though this is an early 2000s movie. So I can't put it in, 2013 when I was in college. But I also think for the holidays, we think of the holidays as this very joyous time period. And I think what we forget is that it also is a sad time period for a lot of people who aren't in relationships and or don't have family around. I mean, there's a whole spectrum of how people could interact or feel about the holidays versus you and I. So I think it kind of depends on what, not to use a pun, but what season you are in your life when you watch this movie or first saw it.
So you were how old when this came out? 10?
Yeah.
What's your first memory of watching this?
I don't think I saw it in the theaters, but I actually have a couple memories, and they are before we went downstairs to open gifts. We would usually be waiting a little bit beforehand, just because our mom was usually setting up like cider and some treats before we went down. And she would want everything, under the tree before we saw everything. And my sister Lisa and I would go into your and Allison's room, and we would usually try and kill time by watching a Christmas movie before we got the okay to go downstairs. And then I would say in more recent years, when Dom and I were kind of first started dating, the first time I went over to his house, it was around Christmas time, and I made him watch this movie with me. And it was just funny because we were in like the early stages of our relationship, and he didn't really want to watch it, but he being classic Dom and being critical of every movie, but he did give it a chance, and he actually didn't dislike it.
Wow.
I don't think it's on his top favorites, but I actually remember it being like a really cute moment because it was the first time I went to his parents' house, and we were in his TV room and watching it, and his brother Joey at the time was really young, and I remember him coming in and saying goodnight to us, and it was like, again, or kind of around the holidays, so definitely a little bit of a nostalgic feeling. Such different experiences.
I know. And
that's what happens when we're 10 years apart.
It's true. I feel like that's kind of been a common theme in a lot of these episodes, but I thought it was really interesting the way that rewatching this after quite a bit of time just kicked up all of those thoughts and memories. And, movies can do that to us in like, for better or for worse.
And this isn't a super happy. There's some really sad.
There is
themes in this movie. It's definitely not there's comedic aspects, but it's almost like sad tones being covered by comedic tones.
You mentioned when this movie came out in the, and how the early 2000s had some really great rom-coms. I think also, this movie kind of opens with talking about 9/11, and I think at this time, the world was kind of healing a little bit, and this movie was something that all of us needed. I think that that's part of its success. I also wanted to ask you if this was the first movie that featured such a robust cast of a lot of famous people. And at the time, there were a lot of famous people in this. Obviously, as 19 years later, technically, there have been some of those actors have become even bigger. Like Martin Freeman is the one that's coming to mind for me. But I feel like there were a bunch of movies that came after this. There was like the Valentine's Day one. There was a New Year's Eve one, and then also films like
He's Just Not That Into You.
Exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm. So films like that had like all of these big stars, but with all of these multiple storylines that were brought together. Was this the first to do that?
We definitely need to do a fact checker on this, but at least on a personal note, it's definitely the first movie I saw that would hit that category. And I will say, I think I've only seen Valentine's Day once, but I was a repeat watcher of He's Just Not That Into You, and it had an amazing all-star cast who a lot of them have gone on to have really big names now, and it was just kind of a small role for them. So yeah, I think at least from a popular standpoint, this kicked it off.
And also just in rewatching this and being on IMDb, being on the Wikipedia page, letting it sink in that Colin Firth and Hugh Grant and Liam Neeson were all in this movie kind of with like equally big parts. And I don't know that if a movie was made today that they would be able to afford all three of them. It was also fun to think about the first Harry Potter film, maybe the second, maybe the third had come out at this point. So there were a couple that were out there, but just knowing that, you know, pretty much every British actor ended up being in Harry Potter, and most of them were in this movie as well.
Yeah. And it also was fun to see supporting roles who are now in a lot of streaming shows that were in this movie, and being able to recognize them, because this was 19 years ago, and it's great to see that their careers are kind of just starting to take off, which is, for any creative, I think that's a very humbling and rewarding thought.
Good reminder. All right, so we have 19 years to write our rom-com Christmas
Perfect.
smash hit.
We gotta get Zendaya now, and then we'll be set.
So, Laura, this time around, what stood out to you as what you love the most?
I think that the structure of it works. The jumping between different stories, and there's probably like one or two characters that I could do without, and their storylines, which we can get into the section of things we didn't like. It wasn't so much like a hate or animosity towards it that it needed to absolutely not be in there, but I think that I just really enjoyed getting to know each of them. And I think for any normal person, it's always very satisfying to have that aha moment of how everyone's connected. And I wish I could kind of take that feeling of experiencing that for the first time during the first watch, because now you know how everyone's connected.
In a way, it's very 2022 friendly, because all of us have no attention span. We're used to being on social media and clicking through stories and going back and forth and multitasking. And that's kind of what this movie is and what it does. And I agree with you. I think they strike a great balance of keeping you engaged by going back and forth between all the stories, but not making you confused. And I think that it would have worked even if the characters weren't connected, but that was kind of like a little extra gift that made it even more special.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they had all come together at the end at that show but didn't know each other, it still works in my book. There's a lot of sweet moments throughout this movie, which I struggle to find in a lot of movies today, because there's not this style. There's not this classic rom-com style. And I felt myself just kind of blushing at certain stories that I was most in love with. I was trying not to play favorites, but I think one of the things I definitely want to ask you is who is kind of your favorite storyline, and who do you resonate most with, but which one do you enjoy watching the most? And I think I really, really love Colin Firth and Aurelia's love story. I think it's really sweet. And I think maybe it's just me being in my mindset that I'm itching to go to Europe. I would love, if I got cheated on, I would love to escape to a French vacation home, drink coffee, and write by a lake in oversized turtlenecks. Sign me up. I also really, really love the Liam Neeson Sam story. I think how can you not love it? It's so heartwarming and beautiful, and it's not the classic, I know that both of them are looking to find love, but just the bond between a son and his dad. And I think Emma Thompson is always going to be first in my book for any movie that I watch her in. and Alan Rickman as well. So I really loved that dynamic, even though their story was a little bit sadder. I think for me, maybe it was the resonating with how much I love Joni Mitchell, and also that I'm turning into her by wearing oversized clothing and that's warm, and wanting to listen, I guess, to Joni Mitchell album. So those are definitely the three that stood out for me.
Which character, or I guess couple, however you want to choose, is the one that you felt like you most related to?
I think I resonated with personality wise with Sarah's character, because she's like a hard worker, and before I was in a relationship, I feel like I was that way, always wanting, I mean, I still, I feel like, have a tendency to always want to help others, that I put some things in my life aside, and just her awkwardness and the shyness and thinking that no one, the cute guy would never go for her. So I feel like I definitely, probably my younger years, resonated the most with her.
Yeah, I would say the same, that not that I resonate with her situation, but definitely her character to me was the most relatable. And not just because she was the only American in this, but also, I don't know where a better place to put this, so I'll just say this now. I love that pink dress that she's wearing at the holiday Christmas party. It was so unique. It was timeless. Like, I would wear that today. And it was like classy, but like festive. And I like that it had like two layers to it. It kind of had this like a pink slip underneath. And then on top of it was this kind of like shiny, shimmery, I don't know, silver gold. Maybe it was both.
I always thought that whenever I would watch this movie, and I was always thinking, I mean, back to the comment about May gasping, but she was ready for that pink slip.
She was.
She did have a little confidence in her, and we love Carl. We love him. I mean, we have no idea what he's like because he says two words. But the thing that I like the most about them, we talk about her dress, but his just early 2000s look, the hair, he kind of has this like mullet going on, but it's a sophisticated mullet. He has the glasses, the turtleneck. He's going for it. And I'm surprised you're not more into him, because he's the art director of The Office. So
how did you know that I'm not that into him?
I don't know. You were doing a little bit of a "can I just say" moment, which was leading with something that you were going to critique about our boy Carl.
Yeah, it's not really more of a critique. I think it's more of just a preference. But I remember, obviously, it was May or Tamara who did the gasp. But I also remember the two of them being like, oh my God, he's so hot. And I think I always kind of liked, is it Mark? Is Mark the "to me you're perfect" guy?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I always thought that he was cuter, but I think it's more of a preference thing. Like, he has a very Irish, Scottish, British look, which my husband is. So I'm just, I guess more in alignment with that than the tall, dark, and handsome look.
That's so funny. And also, if we're talking about competing artists, he is also a gallery owner.
That's
so you're
true.
going for the gallery owner over the Office
Yes. What does he say?
creative director.
It's not funny. It's art.
It's art.
All right. So getting back to your question about which storyline was my favorite. As soon as I was rewatching this today, I knew that both of us were going to like be very attached to the Colin Firth storyline. I mean, I remember that being my favorite storyline back in 2003. And I feel like it has only grown since then because, I think both of us kind of share this love of beautiful spaces, a romanticized idea of Europe. And, with both of us doing more writing as we've become older, I mean, he really was, aside from the, his girlfriend or his wife, whoever that was, cheating on him, the rest of his story was very much, I think, a fantasy that both of us have had. Like getting to go, just be by yourself, being in this beautiful space and having quiet and writing and drinking coffee and having all this extra wine and in this, it's just all of it dream.
Yes, before I forget about the extra wine comment, I remember thinking, he's bringing home all that French champagne and massive cloves of garlic. He had a whole branch of it. So I knew I would be fine with being in Colin Firth's situation.
I mean, both of those things are also so relatable. One, because our mom gives us giant stalks of garlic every year for Christmas. She's done that for the last, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years, because she has a friend who, why does she grow lots of extra garlic? Is that the story?
Property. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a garlic hookup, but I was also thinking about, I love when he makes that comment about like molto familia or something like that, and that's his explanation for having so much wine in his trunk, because anytime Jimmy and I buy wine or champagne from Costco and it's like a good price for a type of wine or champagne that we like, we just buy a bunch of it. So we've definitely driven to New York for Christmas with like cases of wine in our trunk. And I remember making that comment like, oh, if we get stopped, it's like, oh, no, molto familia. I think of all the romantic storylines, I also really liked his, Jamie and Aurelia's love story. I don't want to say too much because I may bring this up again when we talk about favorite scenes and favorite lines, but I thought that their love story was very sweet, especially, I know it's cheesy, but all of the dialogue where they're speaking in different languages but have an understanding was really beautiful.
I know, and I feel like it gets me every time that, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen this, he ends up learning Portuguese in 2 weeks. A little skeptical, knowing that Portuguese is one of the most difficult languages to learn, and goes to ask her for her hand in marriage, and he is speaking to her in Portuguese, and then she starts speaking back to him in English, which is so sweet. So she said, just in cases.
Oh. I very much want to see a movie just with them.
I would be totally fine with that. We need it's the spinoff that we deserve. So maybe we'll write it and slip it on Colin's desk when he's not looking.
So can I talk about my other favorite storyline that isn't less so love related, but it just, to me, was the most entertaining? And it was the story of the young man who decided to go to Wisconsin so that he could score with an American babe. I, again, would watch a TV show just with that character.
Colin.
Oh, right. Yes. Colin, right. Okay, so the character's name is Colin, but I also really liked his friend. I felt like his friend had some really good, great one-liners. I felt like they had good banter and a good relationship, and I'd like to imagine that there was a lot more content in the script with the two of them that got cut because, it was not as like prominent of a story. But yeah, I felt like that was kind of some of the strongest comedy and strongest writing, dialogue-wise.
No, he's low on my list for my favorite story. So I'm so surprised because it's like complete opposite spectrums between Jamie and Colin. Yeah, I was gonna say I think you gravitate more towards Tony also because he's a director in this movie of porn, but just having that director background.
I don't think it was supposed to be porn, and I'll also say that I think in seeing this movie for the first time, I don't think before seeing this movie I knew what body doubles were or that they were used in a movie production. So that was a little bit of education for me, but Also, I'm reading like the IMDb facts. Apparently, I wasn't alone. I think a lot of people were kind of confused as to what was going on there.
Okay. I also really love the two of them. Adorable. I wanted to see them outside of the movie shoot, but they were so cute.
They were cute.
I wanted to like just see them. I wanted to see them on their actual date. They skipped the whole thing and just went to the kiss of the door. They said that they were going out for a holiday drink
Oh.
and to do some Christmas things. And I'm sad we didn't get to go along for the ride. I wanted to do a Christmas day out in London, but
It was also really fun just to have the, I mean, they were such a small part, but it really added to it. Like I'm glad that they kept that in.
yeah, I felt like it was really sweet. We're getting into we're talking about all of our favorites, but what if I'm curious your opinion on just each of the stories in general. So, what are your thoughts on the Prime Minister Natalie relationship? Since that's sort of the one of the centerpieces, since Hugh Grant is our narrator, he's the prime minister.
I really liked Natalie. I think I also really liked the actress, and I was surprised that she hadn't done more. I thought that she was great in this. I liked Hugh Grant's character. Their love story felt a little, I don't know. I wasn't super invested in it. I'm kind of like neutral on it. How about you?
Yeah, and I think maybe with settings, I didn't want to be spending time in the prime minister's office and house because it's not as fun as the set design of all the flats that we get to spend time in. So while I always like Hugh Grant and I like his characters, I like his wittiness and his sarcasm. It works. I just didn't really want to spend time in those scenes. I wanted to go elsewhere. If I had to pick which ones I wanted more of, I would probably say less of these. But I almost feel like, if to your point, if they had just met outside of the walls of his home and his office, and because I think I liked the scene most when he goes to her home and he's introduced to her family. So
I agree. That was the
And-
best part of their relationship.
yeah.
And the little bit when they're in the car and they have their, one of her little, I don't know if it's her brother or cousin, kind of like sitting in the car with them.
Keith the octopus.
Is that what his name was?
So amazing. Yeah. It was, because the mom says Keith will be she says he's going to be really upset. And like it took a long time on the arms to make the arms.
8 is a lot of legs, David.
So we kind of glossed over Emma Thompson, but I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about her character and Alan Rickman's character, because I feel like their marriage dynamic is one that is so portrayed in movies often, but they did it in their own original way, where they've been together for 13 years. They have their inside jokes where they talk about, kind of being like the old man, old woman, but it's a little bit of a controversy that Alan Rickman starts making eyes at his receptionist. I thought that dynamic worked, and I'm happy that they included that story, because it was so different and different life stages from her brother, and then even from like Sarah and Carl's characters. I enjoyed it, even though that it was a little bit more on a sad note.
I agree. Their story made me really sad watching it this time around, because it felt so like real. And I think what made it feel more real is that it wasn't so like clear cut. And again, found this in the IMDb. I don't know if this was like shared in a DVD extra or an article, but I guess people have had differing opinions on whether or not he actually cheated on her, or it was just kind of like, going in that direction. And the screenwriters confirmed, like, no, he definitely does cheat on her, but they stay together but things are kind of broken. And I don't know, that just it made me so sad, especially because she's such a, I mean, they're both cool. I mean, I think that he actually, aside from doing that, seems like I would want to hang out with him. I actually even like his grumpiness, but she's just such a strong woman, and I feel like the way that she's portrayed, it makes me think of so many women I know, not in the sense of like being cheated on, but in the sense of having something bad going on in their life, but putting on a face and going out and still being there for their kids. Especially that scene where she goes to confront him.
No. Happy Christmas. Would you wait around to find out if it's just a necklace or if it's sex and a necklace, or if, worst of all, it's a necklace and love?
And yet at the same time, she's like saying goodbye to people and saying like, oh, like happy Christmas. And like, you would never know that anything is wrong. She's just able to like switch and go back and forth between having this really serious, sad discussion with her husband, but also being this woman that I think a lot of women think that we always have to be.
When she kind of has that realization, she goes into her room and cries and listens to the Joni Mitchell album. And that scene always gets me a little bit, because I think that that's such a relatable thing of, if you're going through a difficult day, you just kind of need you need a minute. Something that's really funny about you looking into if he actually cheated on her or not, when she confronts him, I watched this with the subtitles on. For all of these years, because she had kind of given him a couple of buckets. You're either giving it as a gift, or does this mean gift and sex, or does this mean you're actually in love with this person? And I always thought that his response was, I'm totally in love. And I just didn't really hear it because he was mumbling. But he says, I'm totally in the wrong. And that really changes things, because whatever he did was awful. I mean, every little motion that he was doing throughout the movie and trying to act so innocent in the situation when he was clearly partaking in it as well. But I don't know. I watched it differently this time, because it never made sense to me why at the end they are still together. Because if he had said in that moment, I'm so in love with her, then my thought would have been, oh, he would have left her, and she definitely wouldn't have stayed with him. But it was kind of like he did wrong and he needs to make up for the situation.
Something else that made me feel really old, and granted, I have to look this up, but I have to think that those actors, when this movie was made, I'd like to think that they're at least 10 years older than me and Jimmy, but I've been married longer than they have. They say they've been married 13 years. I've been married 14, going on 15. And I feel like I'm looking at them thinking, like, obviously Alan Rickman's sadly no longer with us, but knowing how old Emma Thompson is and just kind of like thinking that is her age in this movie, which is definitely something that happened watching this. I think because you and I just watched The Staircase over the summer with Colin Firth. So he, of all the actors, is the one that looked so young to me, like considerably younger. I think just because we had seen him recently.
I know, it's weird to think of all the changes. And I actually was trying to think of, for Liam Neeson's character, if he had lost his wife in real life before this film had come out.
I think it was after.
Okay.
But not too much
they may
after.
have played him in that role, which is really sad, because I mean, you will learn from previous episodes on our podcast how much we love Natasha Richardson.
I don't know if that I never realized this because I hadn't watched it with closed captions, or I had just forgotten about this. But Sam is his stepson, which I thought was kind of also like unnecessary. I guess maybe that makes it sweeter somehow that he cares so much about him.
Yeah, and I think it was Because you see Liam Neeson's character trying so hard to form a bond with him and so badly wants to make sure that he's happy because I think he's also trying to fill that void of stepping into the role as stepfather that he knows he can't, we don't know the backstory of his biological father, but yeah, I think it would be a different dynamic if it had been the opposite, because it would be easier for him to communicate with him in the beginning.
That's true. I do like how, I mean, presumably Sam's mom was his only marriage, because Sam makes a comment that says, that there's only one person for everyone. And he's like, there was, for you.
Oh, that was so cute. Yeah. And that actor is in
The Queen's Gambit.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's like one of her friends / love interests for part of it.
I vaguely remember
funny,
this.
but he's so old now. Yeah.
He has 2 notes about Sam. One, I hope you don't take this as an insult because he was so cute. But I feel like you kind of looked like him at that age, like when Love Actually came out. Like you both had this, red hair and like big brown eyes and, really sweet face. I think I always thought that you two kind of like looked a little bit alike as kids. But also read he and Keira Knightley are only like 5 years apart or something.
What?
Yeah, which either she was super young or he was a lot older than, or I think both. I don't know, but that blew my mind a little bit.
That doesn't make sense. I mean, I get that's crazy. They look.
Let me confirm this isn't
older. Yeah.
Keira Knightley was born in 1985. I can't find him. Oh, here we go. Thomas Brody Sangster was born in 1990. Laura's face right now, she's like, she can't process.
Blown.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh. Yeah, so I guess he was just older and she was, so how old was she when this movie came out?
Well, I was 20, so I guess she was 18.
Okay. That's not too crazy. So I feel like we've covered off on most of them. I actually had, so watching this time around, one thing that I did like a little bit more was the Joe Bill friendship. Like I was like, poor Joe. Joe's just getting thrown left and right. And I thought that writing was really funny. I always found Bill to be really obnoxious when I used to watch it, and I was so uninterested in that storyline. But I actually think the writing of his character is hilarious. And it really is a major tie for the film because we're leading up to the #1 Christmas song release. And I think they did a really good job of it. And I thought both of those actors were great.
Same. I had the same exact thoughts that I used to think he was so obnoxious and I wasn't invested in his storyline. And this time I felt like he was one of the most entertaining parts of the movie. So funny. Such a great character.
And I think the last one that we haven't really covered off on is Keira Knightley's character and her husband. So
have at it.
What are your thoughts on it? Yeah.
Laura Linney asks Mark's character at the wedding if he's in love with the groom. And when she said that, this time, watching it today, I thought, you know what? That would have been a more interesting storyline. I would have liked that better if that was what this whole deal was about. I felt like the writers came up with this concept of, kind of the best friend being in love with a girl, which is something that's been done before. And it was just executed very awkwardly. I know we ended up with that like iconic thing with this, with holding up the signs, but just how all of it went down, I kind of feel like they made him out to be kind of creepy the way that he handled it. I don't really love how she kind of came and kissed him at the end. I wanted to like it. Like, I wanted him to, like, I felt bad for him, maybe just because I thought he was cute, but I felt bad for him. I wanted him to get something out of it. But I almost wish it had been like, I'm telling you all this stuff, and by the way, I also have a terminal disease. And then if she kissed him, it would have been like, oh, like, that's sweet. Like, he, they have this, like, one moment, and now he can, like, die happy. Because I feel like when he walks away at the end and he says, like, enough then, he's, like, instantly cured, when I cannot imagine that being the case. And now the three of them are going to have to deal with this situation for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and they even actually ended with the three of them at the airport together, just looking like normal, which makes me feel like in a second movie, she left her husband for him.
Yeah? I mean, she was young. She probably didn't know what she wanted. Now that we know that she was 18.
Yeah, seriously. But I thought we don't really know much about Peter, aside from the fact that he doesn't like Christmas carolers. But other than that, he seemed like a very sweet man.
Yeah.
And he seemed to really be in love with her. So we gotta pour one out for our boy Peter for this one. But I liked this. I liked their wedding scene. I liked the scenes where he wasn't acting awkward, because when it's the three of them, he's able to, and given it was their wedding day, so he was being very kind and was creepily taking videos of her the whole time. But I felt so uncomfortable any of the scenes where he's trying to keep his distance from her. It was just awkward and weird, and it didn't work.
It was so weird. Do you know, I think I'm finally going to be able to articulate what I really didn't like about it. Is like, they didn't make him, again, this could all just be because I think this guy is cute, but they did not make him at all seem like a creep. But all the things he was doing was, like, very creepy. So there was something that just felt a little bit off. Like, they were trying to have their cake and eat it too. Like, oh no, he's actually a great guy, and, like, this is so sweet, and, like, feel bad for him, but also so much cringe.
Yeah. It makes sense that him and Mia are friends, so I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into.
Let's move on to things we did not like. I know you opened this episode by saying that you love this movie so much. You really didn't have a lot of bad things to say. I have quite a few things, little nitpicks, but things that mostly annoyed me about this movie. Let me know when you're ready. I've got my book, like, ready to go.
Oh, wow. She's got a list of grievances. She's ready to go. I think even though it worked and we needed it as a conflict point, but Mia's character of her wearing devil horns at the Christmas party, why? What was the thought there?
I think she was like a caricature of a male fantasy. That's all I could come up with.
That's fair.
Which, okay, fine. I mean, it's a movie, but
yeah. I just wish we could have done without the devil horns, because he says that she looks very pretty at the party. And I'm like, really? Do you see Emma Thompson? Because she looks fantastic in her velvet outfit. So
I should have said this earlier, but now that you're bringing this up, Emma Thompson at the party, she's such a great wing woman. Like, she's talking to Sarah and Carl comes up and she very stealthily is like, I'll take your glass for you. She's just, I want her to be my friend.
I know. She's too good for Alan.
She is.
For her husband. But I think nitpicks, I love Jamie and Aurelia's love story, but no way he's learning Portuguese in 2 weeks. It's just not possible. I mean, it's a very difficult language. I've been trying to learn Italian on Duolingo for a year, and I forgot everything because I haven't used it in 2 months. So I'm calling bullshit on that. Unlike you, I agree with you with the writing between Tony and Colin, but I never liked the Colin Goes to Milwaukee story. I always thought it was funny, the idea of him just getting out of the airport and like just picking Milwaukee and going to a bar. But it's so overdone with those three actresses. I am much more attracted to the sweet moments of this film. Like, if I had to pick Sarah and Carl slow dancing to Norah Jones, I'm gonna pick that over Colin. What's his name? His last name? Fissles. Colin Fissel. Anytime I watch this movie, I wasn't really watching it to give expert film advice. It was definitely much more of a just escapism, turning my brain off and enjoying a rom-com.
I wish I could say the same.
Okay.
Here we go. Again, some of these are more like personal things that I don't like versus problems that I have with the movie, but I'm not a fan of any wedding-related surprises. Not a fan of like public engagements. I don't know. I feel like any scenario like that, including the one that happens in this movie where Mark surprises Peter and Keira Knightley's character, who I can't remember her name, with having musical instruments, musicians play All You Need Is Love in the church. It just, big public surprise displays like that to me are always so much more about the person who organized it than who it's actually for. Unless there's some backstory where the bride and groom really wanted to play that song and there was some reason that they couldn't, and then he's like, oh, I'm going to figure out a way to like deliver on this. That's different. But I like to think that this guy was just like wanting to be showy and chose to do this thing, and I absolutely hated it.
This character, he just continues to be creepy and overdoing things, I guess.
This is one of the second episodes that we're recording since you've gotten engaged. Congratulations, officially.
Thank you.
On behalf of the podcast. But like, think about how you would feel if like you're having this very nice wedding that you picked out everything how you wanted it to go, and then all of a sudden musicians just show up and start playing a song that you did not choose.
Traumatized. Instantly traumatized.
I would be horrified.
No. Horrified.
All right. Another thing that it's not so much that I didn't like it, I was just kind of confused by it. The whole storyline with the American president coming in and kind of getting into this political argument with the British government, coming off of 9/11, maybe there are things that I just don't know that was happening in politics at that time, but I feel like Britain and the US pretty much get along, so it seemed like a strange choice to me to bring the American president in as kind of this like villain.
Yeah. No, I was thinking that as well, and I'm definitely not brushed up on my early 2000s politics, so I would definitely think that there was a reason there. It may have also just been a vehicle for Billy Bob Thornton to make a pass at Natalie to cause conflict, and just having this other powerful, literally the leader of the free world, which really would have held up better in recent years for sure. And not laughing matters, but it would have made more sense. But I didn't like it.
Yeah.
It was not an enjoyable part, even though Billy Bob Thornton is absurd in every character he's in, and he played that part very well.
I thought he was great. I was excited.
Yeah.
I forgot that he was in it. I was excited to see him, but it left me wishing like, why isn't this like the French president or, from some other country? It just, I couldn't, it felt like a phony fight between the countries.
Yeah. I did somewhat enjoy the short Hugh Grant Prime Minister monologue where he's talking about all the things that he likes about Britain, and he's listing off the Beatles and Harry Potter and, all the cliche things. I thought that was cute.
That was cute. Okay, another part that I thought was completely unrealistic, and unfortunately, this was like our first introduction to Alan Rickman's character, but he calls Sarah into his office and kind of prompts her to pursue a relationship with Carl, knowing that she's had this 2 years long crush on him. And everything that we come to learn about Alan Rickman's character throughout the rest of the movie, to me, that one scene is just completely out of alignment. Like, that character does not give a shit about anyone else's relationship. Like, why would he take that upon himself to prompt that conversation?
It was definitely out of character. It's funny though, because I really enjoy that scene because I like the dialogue. It just feels like something that I would write myself, and it's just funny to me every time. I was just reciting it to Dom recently, but I think it's her whole. I know we're talking about things we don't like, but I always enjoy her reaction to saying, does the whole office know? And he says yes. And she says, does Carl know? And he said yes. Everyone knows. I thought it was funny, but I agree. It was definitely out of character. We also don't spend a lot of where we get these moments with Emma Thompson where she's alone or behind closed doors. We don't see how he is alone. He's always with someone. He's always up to something, even when he's in the department store, which we will get to. He is never truly alone. So we don't really know him. He's kind of a question mark. So
all right,
I'm pushing back a little bit on that.
Maybe he has another side. Maybe he's like secretly a matchmaker.
I think that also based on Emma Thompson and Sarah talking to each other at the Christmas party, they have definitely known each other a long time. So yes, it's her boss, but they seem to have a little bit more of a casual friendship, which, I mean, there's a lot of questionable things with that entire scene, with the idea of your boss telling you to pursue someone else in the office, but we'll let it go.
Okay, I'm going to fix this based on what you just said. In a backstory, they've known each other for longer than she's worked. She said that she's worked there for like 2.5 years. Let's say that they've known each other for like 15 years and they have a non-professional relationship in some capacity. And she's friends with Emma Thompson as well. Under those circumstances, where he also just happens to be her boss because of how things unfolded, like maybe he helped her get the job. In those circumstances, I would say that conversation was somewhat appropriate.
I agree. Based on what we know and what we see, it does seem a little out of character.
And I think the last big thing that, this is being critical of a time that's different than today. But I felt like there was just one too many like fat jokes.
Yes.
Fat
what are we
shaming.
doing?
Not just, quite a few things were said about Natalie. And I like how Hugh Grant's, who first of all is like, I'm trying to like understand why. I mean, the fact that they're making any comment at all is just not funny, not appropriate, not necessary. I like that Hugh Grant kind of like says something like, "Oh, like is she chubby?" Like I like that he kind of doesn't see it, or like that that's not something that's important to him. But even Aurelia makes a comment about her sister, like she says that she can't eat. Like, oh, if you saw my sister, you would understand. And then they kind of bring that sister in also as kind of like a joke, at the end of the movie. And I think that those are all kind of things that we've talked about this in other episodes. We're getting better, but sometimes it's hard to kind of like look at a movie that was made 20 years ago through this lens and just kind of cringe at what used to be acceptable.
Yeah, I just think it's cheap comedy, and I didn't No, it's not funny.
Maybe this isn't the best movie to bring this up because I'm sure that this will come up again. But one other thing kind of in that category of like, is like younger women with older guys. I mean, specifically the Mia Alan Rickman relationship. It's not something that I realized just because we saw so much of it in movies that I thought it was normal. But it did always bug me anytime I would see like a storyline like that in a movie, which happens like so often that I'm always like, really? Like that young pretty girl would go for like that old dude. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but it definitely does not happen as much as it's portrayed in the movies. And I think that concept has kind of been like damaging and has, I mean, like led to Me Too and so on. It's something that I wish that it didn't even have to think about, but like I do notice it now when I watch older movies.
Yeah, I also think they make her character out to be the bad person, which isn't really fair because as her boss and superior, he has a duty to make sure that he's drawing the line as well if she is making advances to her and saying that that's inappropriate. Obviously, we wouldn't have the conflict and that whole storyline without it, but they kind of pin it on young women that it's actually your fault and you're the one who is jumping at me, which 9 times out of 10, it is definitely the opposite, which I think has not really held up well. And I think same kind of goes with the Natalie President storyline as well, even though it's abundantly clear that it's his fault, just including that at all. And everyone, you know, if it was anyone else that had heard it, like he obviously walked in and saw it with his own eyes, but people obviously would have pinned it on her instead. Cheeky. Okay, let's jump into favorite scenes. What about you? You alluded to this earlier, so I kind of know what you're going to say, but I want to hear you say it.
I'm going to pick a micro scene. I really like the scene when Colin Firth is driving Aurelia home for the first time.
No, right. Silence is golden. As the Tremolos said. Clever guys. Although I think the original version was by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Great band.
That scene kind of paid off later when he makes the comment.
It's my favorite time of day. Driving you.
Hits you right in the feels. It really does.
It does.
So sweet.
Is your favorite scene also with this couple?
It is with this couple, and it's when, I know these are technically 2 different scenes, but when they jump in the lake together and they're just repeating the same thing, but in different languages.
I really must do copies. You know, there better not be eels in here. I can't stand eels. Doctor, what the hell is that?
I just think that's really cute, but I like when they're sitting together after they get out and she's wrapped in a blanket and he hands her a coffee mug, and it just kind of reminded me of another scene that you really love from the last episode that we put out with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan from You've Got Mail, when he brings her tea when she's sick, because it just, you got a feel for how these 2 characters would be if they were actually together in that moment. She wasn't working. And I love that exchange when she's asking about what kind of book he's writing, and she starts basically playing charades with him to try and get answers out of him.
Romance?
Yes, it's,
policial, crime.
yes, crime, murder.
med medo.
Scary? Yes, sometimes scary, and sometimes not. Mainly scary how bad the writing is.
And I know that's less dialogue, but I think that it was executed really well. And then it leads into that famous, beautiful line of leaving and being sad and being happy. I know I already mentioned this, but I also really like the Sarah and Carl slow dance scene because it's just this slow build up of them finally getting together.
Like a flower waiting to bloom.
I love Nora Jones, and it's just a sweet moment when the music slows down and you feel that moment of it being very anxious and exciting to just a sweet, tender moment of them being together. And I think it also felt, which I'm sure you resonated with when you were seeing this in college, of having a crush on a boy and then finally getting a minute together, and he's playing with her hair and she just can't stop smiling. So it felt very innocent and very finally getting to be with your crush, which I thought was adorable. As sad as it is, I like the Emma Thompson scene of her listening to Joni Mitchell in her room.
Dreams and schemes and circus crowds, I've looked at life that way.
I think it's a very powerful moment.
All right. How about favorite lines?
I'm going to start with the line that we say the most from this, which when Alec Rickman's character is trying to sneakily buy the gold necklace for Mia, and he has a run-in with Mr. Bean.
Could we be quite quick?
And I actually feel that right now because we're recording really late and we're both exhausted. But it's so funny, and just the way that he is narrating the entire process of him wrapping this gift is so absurd, so ridiculous, but I love that. Another favorite has got to be the I hate Uncle Jamie, when Jamie shows up with the multifamilia with all the gifts and all the kids one by one. Another scene that I really love just from a comedic aspect is when the prime minister is showing up at each of the houses, and all of the different reactions that he gets. And when the kids ask them to Christmas carol and his copper starts singing in this really operatic voice.
Okay.
Are you singing carols?
No, I'm not.
Please, sir, please. Please.
Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even, brightly shone the moon that night.
I'm not just saying this to rush through this episode, but you literally took the three things that I was going to mention. Those exact three. Obviously, the quite quick, because we say it all the time, and also that scene is fantastic. There's so much good physical comedy in that scene.
Potpourri.
Yeah, when every time that he's like smelling it, or the way that he very daintily drops some of the dried herbs or the lavender into the bag, it's so perfect. We are the Film to Table podcast. We have not mentioned a lick of food unless we count the lavender that was put into the Christmas box.
I have to say, I was very excited to record this episode, but I was dreading this part of it because there's really there's no real food in this movie besides the shrimp that Colin is handing out at the wedding. And there's champagne, there's a Budweiser when Colin fristles at the bar. There's really no food scenes in this.
I knew I was grasping, and I must have known that there wasn't a lot of food in this movie because I wrote down the lines, "Try my lovely nuts," and
so Juliet brings like a
Mark?
pie or something.
Some kind
He
of
doesn't
like
really look
British.
that good.
No, it looks like a packaged good.
Yeah, and I'm not hating on London at all, but I think in recent years they've really had a resurgence with food, and they probably were just limited in what they could show off during this time period.
The other two Colin food mentions were a beautiful muffin for a beautiful lady in the beginning when he's delivering them, and the appetizer that looks like a dead baby's finger and tastes like it too.
So perfect. For my wedding, I'm gonna have Colin Frissell definitely be my caterer. I'm excited. So does this movie make you want to eat anything or drink anything?
Maybe champagne, but I feel like that's just normally. I don't need a movie to prompt that. I always thought this moment was a little bit awkward, but I could go for a bowl right now. When Karen goes to comfort Liam Neeson's character, Daniel, and they're having that chat in the kitchen, they kind of end the scene with both of them reaching into a box of cereal, which is kind of odd, but I could go for a bowl of cereal. I mean, it's like one of my favorite midnight snacks, and it's almost midnight, so.
Okay. I think you got to get yourself a bowl after this. Nothing comes to mind for this one. So I'm going to give it an F on meals.
Yeah.
Not a good food movie.
This probably wasn't a good choice for to have a discussion about food and film.
If we're jumping into dinner parties, I think we should look at it as like stripping it from a scene from a movie and what food would you include in it. So
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the Peter Juliet wedding. What are they serving there besides
The Peter
the
Juliet
shrimp?
wedding. Oh, so my characters are all the people who are at that wedding.
All the people
that are in the movie.
hungry British people and Sarah.
I like that even though it looks like whatever it is that she references, Juliet's character, or Juliet, whatever she tries to bring Mark, it has some kind of like cheeky British name. I like the idea of serving something British, so maybe like little meat pies, but make them like mini, like that could be like a pasta hors d'oeuvre, but let's assuming that all of this food is prepared very well. Do we think that they had a sit down? No one seems to be sitting. There was a lot of, or we didn't see them at a table.
No one seemed to want to be at this wedding. They said the DJ sucked.
That's true.
They had surprise music performances. They didn't have a good videographer.
I kind of
Where'd
think
they go on their honeymoon?
somewhere on a boat.
They,
I don't know.
a boat at night.
I like to think that this was a wedding that was a buffet wedding. And I'm not saying that I've been to a couple weddings that were buffet only that were done really well and actually like preferable to the sit down dinner, because everyone always says like cocktail hour is the best part of a wedding. So it was kind of like an extended version of cocktail hour where they still had all the stations and so many options to pick from, but that continued out like into the rest of the evening. So I would take that approach. So I would give him the works. A lot of, little British delicacies. I don't know why I keep going back to these pies. I'm thinking like little like shepherd's pies, and then a carving station so they could have like a nice roast, a nice shrimp station with other seafoods that did not look like dead baby fingers. And one of the things that I loved the most when I went to visit London was that in most of the fine restaurants that we went to, there was always a gentleman or a lady strolling through the restaurant with this cart of champagne. So I would have a champagne cart at this wedding. They would just be rolling around throughout the evening. They'd have their nice giant bucket with many champagne bottles just ready to pour for whoever needed them. Laura just pulled out
Done.
a notebook and a pen to take notes as she's preparing for her own wedding. Oh, was this like a test to see what I might
Maybe.
suggest to serve at a wedding?
Your opinion definitely matters to me because Michelle is my wedding producer
That's right.
of She's the creative director and producer of my wedding. So
I
we're
want a
making-
big
we're
credit
making
on the
up titles
program.
now. We've moved from we never had Zola, we never had the Knot, to we now have wedding producers and
Yes.
creative directors.
Yes.
So we're moving on up in the world.
Yes. And I'm only going to suggest this because it would have been a hip thing to do at the time, but now it's kind of outdated. But cupcakes instead of a wedding cake, but still made from like wedding cake flavors, like the cupcakes that you made for our Father the Bride episode.
Yes.
Those
would be great.
Big, beautiful station of like a tower of those cupcakes with like flowers around it, but nothing too fragrant that would interfere with the smell of the buttercream.
I have about one brain cell left after this recording.
Do we want to stick with this like party theme? How about you have to cater the holiday party at the nude art gallery, which is I could see you throwing your wedding at a venue like that.
Yeah, I mean, Mia did not do a good job because I didn't see anyone eating food there. Alan Rickman lightly told her to make sure that there's enough guacamole. Who serves guacamole at a Christmas party? What are they doing? All right, I got this. I think that I would bring in an Italian caterer. I know that this company has a lot of money and they can afford it. You can tell. If they're doing it at an art gallery, they have deep pockets. So I think I'm going to just do a lot of like classic Italian food because these are Brits and they'll be happy with the more Americanized, I would say, Italian food. So we're going to have like chicken parm, maybe some chicken parm sandwiches because it's a little bit easier to eat. We don't want Sarah to be needing to juggle a chicken parm plate as well as her champagne. I mean, it's too much. But if she has a bite, she can either quickly chew or hand it to Emma Thompson. So we're in good shape. I think I would also have some like bruschetta, which I've definitely said in another pod, but that's usually like my go-to, and maybe caponata as well, because those are good. Like you take a little spoon, you put it on your crostini, you move on down the line. I would have mixed winter salad, so maybe some like walnuts and goat cheese in there. Pasta with vodka sauce.
Everyone loves that.
Not a great bite, but so it's a little difficult again to juggle on a plate, but they could be in like those little cups and then you just have a little fork and you eat quickly and move on. I just feel like people want to get drunk and rub up on each other at this party, so we don't want it to be too inconvenient for them to eat like while they're dancing. And then for drinks, I think it's just going to be like an open bar situation, but the featured cocktails are going to be dirty martini, old fashioned, gin and tonic, and red and white wine.
Perfect.
Like a featured red and white wine.
I want to go to this Christmas party.
Same. All right, Michelle, getting into our this or that segment. Would you rather be in love with your best friend's spouse or get hit on by POTUS? And let's pretend POTUS is Billy Bob Thornton in this scenario.
I think it hit on by POTUS, especially if
Okay.
it's Billy Bob Thornton. That would be a great
Fair.
story. Yeah.
Okay. Would you rather be in a flash mob at a wedding or be the octopus at the Christmas nativity pageant?
I think I'd like to be in a flash mob.
Really?
I kind of secretly always wanted to be in a flash mob. And I was almost in one once when I was in LA, actually. This is before you moved there at
I didn't know about
at
this.
City Walk. But then I
Wow.
realized that it wasn't a true flash mob. It was actually like a choreographed production. And I got to be
Yeah.
a spectator. But anyway,
Uh-huh.
yeah, flash mob.
Your
All
moment
in.
will come. Would you rather lose your novel in a Portuguese lake or spend winter break in Wisconsin?
Oh my gosh. Well, the novel's hitting close to home, so I have to say I'd rather go to Wisconsin for Christmas break.
Oh, and you would hate the colds.
I know. That's saying a
Wow.
lot.
This
Yeah.
is really saying a lot. Okay. All right. Would you rather have Rufus, also known as Mr. Bean to most people, as your department store attendant, or get gifted a Joni Mitchell cassette tape by your spouse?
I would rather have Rufus be my attendant at the department store, even if it meant it was taking a long time.
We really differ in that category. I would be so happy if I got a Joni cassette. Okay, pick a holiday party. Harry's risque office party or Billy Mac's Christmas is all around #1 celebration party.
I'm going to go with the office Christmas party. Even though it's a little risque, I feel like they had some good tunes.
Yeah. I would
Seems like a cool venue.
Gladly hang out with Laura Linney
Yes.
at a holiday Christmas party. Have some
Same.
punch and sit in the corner.
Maybe dance with Carl.
Maybe.
It could happen, maybe. All right, you ready? As usual, we have a little bit of overlap, but we have none that are exactly the same. Okay, so first one is, would you rather have a flash mob style rendition of All You Need Is Love sung to you at your wedding, or be proposed to at your place of work in front of your entire village?
I am not a fan of flash mobs, so I'm going to go with the proposal. And usually I wouldn't be okay with that because I prefer a private setting. But if I was living in a Portuguese village, I would be very happy. And it seems like a good time. I feel like people would bring out some good Portuguese liquor and have some great food, and it would be a grand time.
It seemed she was
so
happy.
romantic.
Yeah.
Love that scene.
Okay. What would you rather receive for Christmas? The gold heart necklace or what I thought was a Joni Mitchell CD? I don't know if it matters CD versus cassette,
I
I know your answer no matter what.
Definitely the cassette. That necklace was tacky. It was not even nice. I wanted the potpourri bag over the actual necklace.
the Christmas box.
Yes.
Who would you rather play in the Christmas pageant? The first lobster or the octopus?
The lobster. I love a lobster.
Would you rather sing All I Want for Christmas Is You in front of your entire middle school or strip while you're singing Christmas Is All Around on TV?
I'm going to have to go with the middle school performance. They're both really painful, but I'm not that free of a bird to do any television live performances or features. I'm out. This is why we're in podcasting, because
yes, it's safe in the booth.
Behind the scenes. Yes.
Okay, last one. How would you rather have someone tell you that they love you? With a series of notes written on poster board or by running through the airport getting chased by security right before you get on a plane?
Probably the note cards, because I feel like in an airport setting, if someone was jumping through the gate, I'd be like, listen, I got to get on the plane. I don't know them. I'd be like, I have my whole routine. I've got my headphones in. I am online when, they're calling my group. And I don't want anything interrupting that. And also, they might not let me get on the plane. So
you got to get to Portugal.
It's a no for me. Yeah. I got places to be. I have other proposals to attend to.